Hello and welcome to episode 8 of What Makes This Song Special. By now, most of you viewers and listeners know the protocol. We take a song that reminds me of a certain point in my life. I tell a little story about that point in my life, about what makes the song special to me, and then I do a part 2 video where I will do my own cover version of said song. So this week we are going to go back to around about 1997 or 98. I'd have been about 5th or 6th year at high school, around about that time that I talked about in episode 5. If you haven't seen that already, you can head to episode 5, the Manic Street Preachers episode. I talked about some mental health struggles in that episode, and some people thanked me, both in the comments and privately, for being open about mental health. So I decided I sort of wear my heart on my sleeve again this week. I don't want this to become, a regular occurrence. I think the stories hopefully will be quite funny some weeks, and they'll be, emotive in their own way. But so I'm not looking for sympathy by opening up about these things, but these are just parts of my life and things that have happened in my journey. And I think that it sometimes helps to hear somebody talk about these things openly. Makes people realise that we're not all alone. So and I think when you experience some of the harder times in life, you then experience the good times even more. The whole yin and yang theory. So anyway, there back 5th or 6th year, there was a guy in our year group called Graham Cook, and Graham Cook was the oldest in the year group by I think he was almost about a year older than me. But we were the same year at school. He was turning 18 a long time before the rest of us. And he was having a party in a pub in the city centre of Glasgow. So the whole year group were invited. This was something everybody was excited about and talking about for weeks in advance in preparation for this big party. And the venue was it was like a restaurant come pub club on the side of the famous Glasgow Clyde. It was called the Trading Post, I think. And Graham was going to have no problems getting in. Obviously, he was 18, but the rest of us had to settle for fake IDs in the hope that bouncers or security guards, for any non-Brits, I don't know if that's a British term, bouncers, I don't know, but security guys, security people, security guards, we were hoping they were going to be lenient on the age restrictions for getting into a pub or a club at that point, because most of us were about 16 or 17. Some of the goings on that evening would incriminate far too many of my old school peers for me to say much about the goings on of the party itself. So let's just say that the stories from that party sort of circulated the school for the months and years that followed. Some incredible stories that will go down in Williamwood High School folklore and history. But I was personally behaving myself, not partaking in the underage drinking. That wasn't really my thing back then, so I'm not really I'm not sure what happened in the night, but something huge escalated that evening, to the point where police arrived in numerous vans, cars. There was a fire, and we were all underage in a club, and basically it was time to run. It was time to run, so we all kind of found an exit, ran across the main road, past the fire engine, police cars, and tried to get away without getting caught for being in a pub or drinking premises before we were 18, which is the legal age for getting into a pub in the UK. So we did a runner, as they say, and we ended up. I don't really remember how we ended up in Sauchiehall Street. Sauchiehall Street's at the other side of the city centre, so we must have run the whole way through Glasgow City, from the bottom to the top. I'm not sure what happened en route or if we stopped off anywhere else, but I remember we ended up in this really dreadful and sort of filthy Chinese restaurant on Sauchiehall Street, and for me, I don't know why, but I could feel the start of a panic attack coming on. And the strange thing was that it had nothing to do with the police chase or the crazy events of the evening. Anyone who has ever suffered from anxiety knows that a panic attack can be sort of ignited from what seems like nothing. So you can be fine 1 minute, and then for me, probably it was the fear of having a panic attack. So the fear of the fact that I was out with friends, probably in my head something said, oh, what if you had a panic attack right now? And that was enough for me to go, oh God, how terrible would that be to have a panic attack in front of all my friends and people we were with from school, and sort of embarrass myself and cause a big scene. And so anyway, I end up having a panic attack, start to sort of shake and feel sick. And I remember like making my way downstairs to this bathroom that was like down about 4 flights of stairs. And I remember like hyperventilating in this filthy toilet floor. Me, a complete germaphobe at the best of times, in this filthy toilet, lying on the floor, hyperventilating and trying to catch a breath and trying not to be sick. And it was, it wasn't fun. And as I said, I don't know what ignited it. It genuinely wasn't really we weren't really up to much trouble anyway, so it wasn't like the police were after us. But it wasn't really that had ignited it. It was just the way things can be when you are an anxiety sufferer, which I definitely was, quite badly back then. So I don't really remember what happened after that. Everything's quite a blur. But I remember my mate Michael, who I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, the True Faith New Order episode. Michael and I ended up back at mine, and he stayed the night at mine at Mum and Dad's house, and I couldn't sleep. Just kept thinking about what had happened that night and how it was embarrassing. And the next morning we'd arranged to meet up at another school friend, Joanne Williamson's house. She was part of a group of friends that we all hung about together, and she'd been there the night before, and everybody who went to Joanne's the next morning had been there the night before. So when I walked in, everybody was already there, and there was this kind of silence, and I sort of realised that they were all probably talking about me and obviously what had happened the night before, and they all pretended like nothing had happened, but I tried to act very normal, and I could feel the elephant in the room, and that elephant was me, and the sort of issues and things that I was going through at the time, and friends were starting to sort of see through the cracks, and they were all kind of concerned about me, I'm sure, and nobody knew what to say. So the troubled artist and all that, the songwriter, the poet needs the pain, and so yeah, we spent some time there. It was quite awkward, and after a while I decided, I just had such a kind of, it'd been a mad 24 hours and I just wanted out. So I headed back up the road, and I remember the day before, so during the day of the party, I'd actually gone into the city and bought the single, and the single was Jesus to a Child by George Michael, which, if you haven't heard, is an amazing song. And in fact, I recorded a version of that on YouTube a long time ago, a few years back. I'll leave a wee link. You can check that one out. It's a long time ago, but I did a wee version of Jesus to a Child. And I bought the single. That would have been from George Michael's older album, which came out in 1996. So I don't know where I found a single, but I know a year and a half later. But I bought that single and loved the song. And there was a B-side to the single. Now, B-sides, sadly, once again, I'm having to show my age by talking about things that aren't really, they don't exist anymore in the current world, because everything just gets released as a single, an EP, an album, and it's all on iTunes or Apple Music, Spotify. It used to be that if you bought a single, it would be a CD or vinyl or a cassette or whatever it was back, whatever medium it was on. And when an artist released a single, they would always release another song on the B-side. You would get like a wee free song to listen to as an extra on the single. So the single would be the latest release, and then there would be another song on the B-side. So the B-side sometimes was just a song that was like a a song that maybe the band or the artist didn't deem sort of good enough to be on the album. Or sometimes it was like a live version of another song, or a kind of unreleased demo version of a song, or whatever. And in this case, the B-side was, it was a live version of a song called One More Try. And I hadn't actually heard that song before. I hadn't bought, it was from George Michael's Faith album. And Faith was actually the first album that George Michael released when he left Wham. So he was in the kind of a very 80s pop duo called Wham. Sort of like a boy band of their time. And I think when he left, I think a lot of people just thought of him as being this kind of, pretty pop star that had a nice voice, and didn't really realise the real genius and songwriting prowess of George Michael. And so he released this album called Faith, which had the famous title song Faith that I'm sure everybody knows. And it had some other great songs on it as well. I'm sure Father Figure's on that album, and obviously One More Try, which we're going to speak about a wee bit more in a second. Yeah, fantastic album. And Freedom, which is lyrically all about him breaking free from the shackles of the sort of organised pop band world that he was in, and becoming a real artist, a real singer-songwriter that people would respect, and it worked out well for him, and very well. It worked out very well for him. But this song, One More Try, I hadn't heard the Faith album, and One More Try, it was this like live gospel version, which is a wee bit different to the original. I think it's a semitone lower, and he changes bits and pieces of the arrangement and a couple of the lyrics as well. And when I do the part 2, I'm going to do the live version, because that's the one that I heard that day, so I'm going to keep it true to the story. So I remember going home and listening to this new single, Jesus to a Child, and when it finished, obviously the next song plays, and it's as I said, One More Try, and it just blew my mind. I mean, it just absolutely blew my mind. Because it's live as well, it sounded amazing. He sings the first line, and you hear the whole crowd applaud and cheer, and it's just, it sent shivers right up my neck. And I remember just honestly listening to that song on repeat. I mean, Jesus to a Child is a masterpiece, and I'd heard that a few times before buying the single, but I ended up just putting One More Try on repeat. I must have listened to that song 50 times in a row that night. And although the song's kind of, it's about I think it's about unrequited love. It's about a breakup. It's about somebody down on their luck, struggling with a relationship, and it kind of spoke to me about something different. It spoke to me about what I'd been sort of going through, and I was so fed up of feeling different at the time and feeling scared of everything in life, and I think just fed up of trying to hide this whole side of me, because I was really like quite extroverted, and I was quite cocky, and I like to kind of play that. I'd like to play that persona in front of friends and things like that. Everybody always joked about me being cocky, but really deep down I was anything but, and I really was struggling with a lot of mental health issues at the time. And the song spoke to me in a different way. There's lines in it like there's a line that says, "Teacher, there are things that I don't want to learn," and it felt to me like he was saying that he didn't want to hurt, even though he knew that the hurt would lead to something better for him eventually. And to me, that felt like it was about the suffering that I was enduring, and feeling like maybe there was some reason for that suffering. Maybe there was some reason. Maybe I had to suffer to then appreciate the beauty of life that that comes after that. So everything's a lesson. That whole teacher line, I think that's a wonderful lyric, and the lyrics in the song are fantastic. And I suppose we all have a fear of doing something because we've suffered in the past, and I think we all suffer like that. And so the song speaks to people on different levels. I think that's the beauty of a great lyric. A great lyric can be about, it can be a love song, but then somebody else can hear it and interpret it in a completely different way. And it can speak to them on a completely different level about another narrative and their story. So I think that's a wonderful thing about a great lyric, and certainly the lyrics in this song are really, really special. So so yeah, that song always reminds me of that crazy day, the party, which is a bit of fun, the party, but then just the aftermath of that party, going up to that toilet in the Chinese in Sucky Hall Street in Glasgow, and having a panic attack in the bathroom. And I can almost look back at it now and laugh, even though at the time it was really a scary, terrifying experience. I can look back now and sort of from a different perspective, and sort of laugh at it and see it for what it truly was. You know, like, all these things are transitory. Like, you'll get through these moments in life. You just have to remember that there'll be another point in your life where you'll be looking back at times that were tough or whatever, and you can sort of laugh at them and reflect upon them. So but I look at it and I listen to that song, and it always takes me back to that day in my room where I was just feeling quite lonely, and I needed something to make me feel better, and George Michael and One More Try made me feel better, made me feel less alone. And I ended up writing a song that night. Actually, I wrote a song called Understand Me, which was actually never really good enough to be on any of my albums. It should have maybe been a B-side. But Understand Me was just a wee track that I wrote. And again, early on in my songwriting career, not one of my best tracks ever, but one that I've got a wee recording of that I'll still stick on myself sometimes and have a listen to. It's all part of the learning curve of becoming a songwriter, and that was all part of the inspiration from George Michael. So we'll talk a wee bit about George Michael's voice. I mean, I could probably dedicate an entire YouTube series to George Michael's voice. George Michael's voice is, I think, maybe the greatest male vocalist in pop history. I think Freddie Mercury's, my favourite, and maybe he's the greatest in rock history, but George Michael's voice, I first heard him when he sang Somebody to Love with the remaining members of Queen at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert. And he was the only singer in that concert that night that covered a Queen song that was as good as the original. I mean, his version that night, if you, again, jump on, or you're already on YouTube if you're watching this, but if you search Freddie Mercury tribute concert, George Michael, Somebody to Love, it's just incredible. And there's actually a behind the scenes bit where you can watch them rehearse it for the first time, and you see actually Brian May turning round to Roger Taylor and Queen and just sort of nodding, and you can see him sort of thinking, wow, we've finally found somebody who can sing a Queen song, like Freddie. He sings it slightly differently to Freddie. I mean, Freddie, my favourite singer of all time, but George up there, maybe my second favourite singer of all time, but George is a technically better singer than Freddie Mercury. That Freddie had the magic in his voice that was kind of, and that goes back to that whole argument about technique versus style that we've spoken about a little bit before. Again, I don't want to make this all about vocal coaching. These episodes, I don't want to bore people who aren't singers, so I keep these quite brief. I keep it quite brief, but George Michael, I mean, his technique it's almost flawless. And as a vocal coach of 15, 16 years now, and I've been teaching singers every day, I don't think there's one student that I've ever taught over the years who hasn't been subjected to sort of bags of George Michael examples from me. Listening to his tone and his technique and everything about his gift. It's just, the man was so gifted, it's unbelievable. So perfect tone, power without pushing too much, air, fragility when it's needed, crescendos into huge power when it's needed, smoothness that was, I think, unparalleled by any singer I've ever heard, male singer anyway. Slow and perfect vibrato, incredible range, beautiful falsetto. Maybe and maybe most of all, his ability to connect emotionally with a song and with a lyric, because that's one thing that's missing from a lot of perfectly technical singers like George is. And I don't know if that's because he trained really hard at singing or if he was just one of those lucky genetic freaks that was just amazing. But a lot of great technical singers spend too much time trying to sound perfect, I think, and not enough time connecting emotionally with the lyric, with the song. And that's something George was amazing at. You know, like, you didn't even have to hear the lyric to know what the song was about. It was just there, and it was in the tone of his voice. Literally a different level of singer. And I don't want to keep going on and on and on. So we'll maybe, I mean, I'm sure there'll be another couple of George Michael songs in my wee what makes this song special series. So we can cover more at other times as well. But yeah, that's George, and just a monster of a singer, like an absolutely incredible singer. And that's my wee story for this week. George Michael, One More Try, live version. I should really tell you which live version, but I genuinely, I'm not sure which live version. If you YouTube the live version, it's almost always that version, but I don't know, I can't remember exactly where it's from, but it is the B-side to Jesus to a Child, and it's another song you should definitely check out. And as I said, there's a wee video of me singing that song somewhere as well. But once again, as always, please hit subscribe. I've noticed a lot of the views and things have started to climb, which is great, but I need more subscriptions, so get some subscribe buttons hit, please, and hit the video for part 2 for my cover of One More Try. Thanks so much.